The day I graduated from college I hoped my parents would finally be proud of me, but instead they walked right past me to hug my cousin, calling him their real success story, and in that moment I realized I was invisible to them. I still remember the exact moment I decided to throw away everything good in my. It was 3 months after graduation, and I was working my first real job at a marketing firm downtown. Sarah had been my girlfriend since sophomore year, and we just moved in together to this tiny apartment that smelled like paint and possibility. She was everything I thought I wanted. Smart, funny, gorgeous in that effortless way where she'd wake and somehow look better than girls who spent 2 hours getting ready. We had plans. The kind of plans that make chest feel warm when think about them. Marriage, kids, a house with a backyard where we'd teach our children to ride bikes. But that graduation day kept replaying in my head like a broken record. I walked across that stage with my business degree, scanning the crowd for my parents' faces. When I found them, they weren't even looking at me. They were 3 rows back, whispering excitedly about my cousin Marcus, who had just gotten into medical school. As I shook the dean's hand, I heard my mom's voice carry over the applause. That's our real success story right there. They walked right past me afterward. Didn't even see me standing there in my cap and gown, diploma in hand. They went straight to Marcus, wrapped him in the kind of embrace I'd been craving my entire. "We're so proud of," my dad said, his voice thick with emotion I'd never heard him use about me. I stood there watching, invisible, while they celebrated someone else's achievement on what was supposed to be my day. That feeling of being second, best of never being enough, it festered inside me like an infected one. Sarah tried to understand, tried to tell me my worth wasn't determined by my parents' approval. But she didn't get it. She came from a family that celebrated everything, from good grades to successful job interviews to perfectly cooked dinners. The resentment started small. I'd catch comparing our relationship to what I saw online, to the couple at the coffee shop who seemed more passionate, to the way my coworker Jake talked about his girlfriend like she was a prize he'd won. Deserved better than settling. Jake would say during our lunch breaks. "You're young, successful, good looking. Why tie down when could be experiencing everything has to offer?" I started staying late at work, telling Sarah it was for career advancement. Really, I was just avoiding going home to our shared dreams and her unwavering faith in our future. She'd make dinner and wait for me, even when I showed at 10 p.m. with some excuse about client meetings. "I believe in us," she'd say, kissing my cheek as I sat down to cold pasta. "We're building something beautiful together." Those words should have made me feel guilty. Instead they made me feel trapped. Then Emma started working in our department. She was everything Sarah wasn't. Mysterious where Sarah was transparent. Flirtatious where Sarah was sincere. She had this way of looking at me during meetings that made me feel like I was the most interesting person in the room. When she laughed at my jokes, it felt like validation I'd been starving for my entire. "Girlfriend is lucky," Emma said one day as we waited for the elevator. Seemed like the kind of guy who really has his together. The lie felt so good coming from her lips. I wasn't a guy who had his together. I was a guy who felt invisible to his own parents, ordinary to everyone else, and increasingly distant from the woman who loved him unconditionally. "She is pretty great," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Emma stepped closer as the elevator doors closed. "But are happy?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire I was about to start. I should have said yes. I should have talked about Sarah's laugh, about the way she drew little hearts in the steam on the bathroom mirror, about how she'd memorized my coffee order and had it ready every morning. Instead I said, "I don't know anymore." That was the moment. That was when I chose to open the door to betrayal instead of slamming it shut. Emma smiled, a knowing smile that promised things I told I deserved to explore. "Maybe should figure that out," she whispered as the elevator reached her floor. That night, I came home to find Sarah had decorated our apartment with balloons and streamers. She'd gotten a promotion at her job and wanted to celebrate with me. She'd even bought champagne, the good kind that we usually saved for special occasions. "I wanted to surprise," she said, practically glowing with excitement. "I know things have been stressful with work, but I thought maybe we could take a weekend trip to that bed and breakfast we talked about." I looked at her, at the effort she'd put in, at the hope in her eyes, and felt nothing but resentment. Not at her, but at for not being the kind of man who could appreciate what was right in front of him. "That's great," I said, accepting her hug without really returning it. "Really great." She pulled back, studying my face. "Are okay, seemed distracted lately." I could have told her the truth right then. Could have said I was struggling with feeling inadequate, that my parents' rejection still stung, that I was questioning everything about our together. She would have listened. She would have helped me work through it. Instead I lied. "Work's been crazy." The next day, Emma asked if I wanted to grab drinks after work. "Just as colleagues," she said. "Just to decompress from a long week." I texted Sarah that I'd be late again, then spent 3 hours at a dimly lit bar, telling Emma things I'd never told my girlfriend. About feeling invisible, about never being good enough, about wondering if I was wasting my youth on a relationship that felt more like an obligation than a choice. Emma listened with the kind of attention that felt intoxicating. She made me feel seen, heard, important. When her hand brushed mine reaching for her drink, I didn't pull away. "You're not invisible to me," she said, her voice soft and dangerous. "We're actually pretty incredible." I went home that night and found Sarah asleep on the couch, my dinner covered in foil on the kitchen counter. She'd waited as long as she could. There was a note next to the plate: "Hope work went well. Love more than coffee," which is saying a lot. Said I stared at that note for a long time, feeling the weight of what I was about to destroy. Sarah loved me more than coffee, which was her favorite thing in the world. She saw the best in me even when I couldn't see it in. And I was about to throw it all away because someone else's attention felt more exciting than someone else's love. But I was too far down the rabbit hole of self-pity and justification to stop. I'd convinced that I deserved to explore my options, that Sarah would be better off with someone who appreciated her. That this was about finding rather than betraying the person who knew me best. The next week Emma and I started texting outside of work. Innocent at first, then increasingly flirtatious. She sent me pictures of her coffee, her lunch, her view from the office window. I found looking forward to her messages more than going home to Sarah. "I feel like I barely see anymore." Sarah said one evening as I typed a response to Emma from our kitchen table. Are we okay? I looked at her, at the concern etched across the face I used to love tracing with my fingertips, and felt it of something that might have been my conscience trying one last time. We're fine, I said, going back to my phone. Just busy season at work. That was 3 weeks before I crossed the line completely. 3 weeks before I made the decision that would destroy not just my relationship with Sarah, but my relationship with. 3 weeks before I learned that some mistakes don't just change, they change who are forever. And I was about to find out that the person I'd become was someone I couldn't stand to look at in the mirror. The company holiday party was where I finally became the person I swore I'd never be. Sarah had bought a new dress for the occasion, this deep blue thing that made her eyes look like ocean water. She was excited to meet my coworkers, to see my professional world, to be part of something that had been taking so much of my time lately. I can't wait to put faces to all the names I've been mentioning, she said as we got ready. Especially Emma. She sounds really nice from all the stories tell. My stomach twisted. I'd been mentioning Emma more than I realized, weaving her into conversations like she was just another colleague, instead of the woman I'd been emotionally cheating with for months. She's just a coworker, I said, avoiding Sarah's eyes in the mirror. I know, but she seems to make work more fun for. That's nice. The party was at some upscale hotel downtown. Sarah looked stunning and I should have felt proud to walk in with her on my arm. Instead I found scanning the room for Emma, my heart racing with anticipation that made me sick with guilt. Emma was by the bar, wearing a red dress that looked it cost more than our rent. When she saw me, her face lit with that smile that had been keeping me awake at night. When she saw Sarah beside me, something flickered in her expression, disappointment, maybe, or challenge. Must be Sarah, Emma said, extending a perfectly manicured hand I've heard so much about. All good things, I hope. Sarah laughed, shaking Emma's hand warmly. And must be Emma. This one talks about all the time. I wanted to disappear, standing there between them. Seeing Sarah's genuine kindness next to Emma's calculated charm, I realized how far I'd fallen. Sarah was being her usual self, open, trusting, kind to someone she saw as my friend. Emma was playing a game Sarah didn't even know was happening. Can I steal him away for just a minute? Emma asked Sarah after we'd been talking for a while. There's someone from the client team he needs to meet. Sarah nodded enthusiastically. Of course, I'll grab us some drinks. Emma led me to a quiet corner near the hotel lobby, away from the party noise. The client team excuse had been a lie and we both knew it. She's prettier than I expected, Emma said, standing closer than necessary. Emma, I shouldn't be over here with why, we're just talking. She stepped even closer. Unless there's something else want to be doing. That was the moment. That was when I could have walked away, gone back to Sarah, confessed everything, and tried to rebuild what I'd been slowly destroying. Sarah was 50 feet away, probably ordering my favorite drink and making small talk with my coworkers, trusting me completely. Instead Emma. It lasted maybe 5 seconds, but it was enough to the man Sarah had fallen in love with. When we broke apart, I felt like I was looking at from outside my body, watching a stranger make the worst decision of his. I've been wanting to do that for months, Emma whispered. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt horrified. Instead I felt a rush of validation that I'd been chasing since my parents walked past me at graduation. Emma wanted me. Emma had chosen me over all the other guys in the office. Emma made me feel special. We can't do this, I said, but my voice had no conviction. No one has to know, she said, straightening my tie with intimate familiarity. It's just between us. I went back to the party in a daze. Sarah handed me and slipped her arm through mine, chatting about how nice everyone seemed, how proud she was of me, how glad she was that I'd found such a good job with such good people. Every word felt like a. The affair started the next week. Coffee dates that turned into lunch dates that turned into hotel rooms during our lunch breaks. Emma made me feel alive in a way I told Sarah never had. With Emma, I was mysterious, exciting, dangerous. With Sarah I was just normal. I started coming home later and later, making client dinners and work emergencies. Sarah never questioned me. She'd heat my dinner and listen to my lies with the same trust she'd always shown me. For working so hard, she'd say, rubbing my shoulders as I sat at our kitchen table, guilt-eating me alive. I'm proud of how dedicated are. The lies came easier each time. I had an entire second that Sarah knew nothing about. Emma and I would text all day, meet whenever we could, talk about everything except the people we were betraying. Because Emma had a boyfriend too, a detail she conveniently left out until we were already too deep to stop. He doesn't understand me like do. She'd say, tracing patterns on my chest in hotel rooms that smelled like cleaning supplies and broken promises. Make me feel like again. I told the same thing. That Sarah and I had grown apart, that we wanted different things, that this was about finding, rather than betraying someone who loved me. I created an entire narrative where I was the victim of a relationship that wasn't fulfilling enough, rather than the perpetrator of a betrayal that would destroy everything good in my. For 3 months, I lived this double. Sarah planned our future while I destroyed it. She researched engagement rings on my laptop, not knowing I'd cleared the browser history of hotel bookings. She talked about the house we'd buy, the kids we'd have, that we'd build together. Meanwhile, I was building a relationship with Emma that was based entirely on lies and stolen moments. We never talked about the future because we both knew it didn't include each other. She was using me to feel wanted while staying with her boyfriend. I was using her to feel special while destroying my relationship with Sarah. The beginning of the end came when Sarah found a receipt in my jacket pocket. It was from a restaurant downtown, a place she and I had never been to for 2 people, on a day when I told her I was working late. Hey, she said casually, holding the receipt while I was getting ready for work. Did take a client to Chez Laurent last Thursday. My turn to ace. Chez Laurent was where Emma and had gone for what we'd called our anniversary. 3 months of lying to everyone we claimed to care about. Yeah, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Big client. Had to pull out all the stops. She studied the receipt more carefully. 2 glasses of and a shared dessert. That's either a very romantic client dinner or. The way she trailed off told me she was starting to put pieces together. Sarah wasn't. She'd just been choosing to trust me instead of following the evidence. If it was a female client, I said, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. she insisted on, and they messed our dessert order so they comped us one to share. Sarah looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in her eyes. Not trust exactly, but the willingness to keep believing in me despite evidence to the contrary. Okay, she said quietly, putting the receipt down. That makes sense. But it didn't make sense and we both knew it. That was the moment Sarah started paying attention instead of just loving me. That was when my house of lies began to crumble. Over the next 2 weeks she noticed everything. How I guarded my phone like it contained state secrets. How I'd started dressing better for work. How I came home with the smell of perfume that wasn't hers. How I'd stopped initiating conversations about our future. She didn't confront me directly. Instead, she started planning something that would either save our relationship or end it completely. A surprise visit to my office. She later told me she'd wanted to bring me lunch, to do something nice for me, to try to reconnect with the man she felt slipping away from her. She picked sandwiches from our favorite deli and headed to my office building, probably rehearsing how happy I'd be to see her. Instead, she saw me walking into the hotel across the street from my office building. With Emma, she followed us. Watched us get into the same elevator, saw which floor we got off on, waited in the lobby for an hour until we came back down, laughing and touching each other like we belonged together. When I got home that night my keys didn't work. Sarah had changed the locks. My clothes were in trash bags on the porch, along with a note that said simply, "I saw today. Don't come back, don't call me. Don't try to explain." I stood on that porch for 20 minutes holding that note, finally understanding what I'd done. Not just the cheating, but the months of lies, the stolen trust, the slow of someone's faith in love itself. I'd taken Sarah's wholehearted belief in us and used it against her. I'd let her make plans for a future I was actively destroying. I'd watched her love me completely while I parceled out my affection to someone else. I called Emma from my car, parked outside the apartment that was no longer my home. "Sarah found out," I said when she answered. "Oh," a pause. "What are we gonna do?" The question hit me like a, what were we gonna do? We were gonna do nothing, because what we had wasn't real. It was stolen time and borrowed feelings, built on a foundation of lies and justified by selfishness. "I don't know," I said, but I did know. We were going to do nothing because there was nothing to do. Emma wasn't gonna leave her boyfriend for me. I wasn't gonna build a with someone I'd met through betrayal. We were just two people who'd used each other to feel something that wasn't real. "Maybe this is for the best," Emma said after another pause. It was getting complicated anyway. That was how 3 months of lies ended. Not with drama or promises or fights about who would choose, just with Emma deciding it had gotten too complicated. Like we were a hobby she was bored with rather than people whose lives we'd destroyed. I hung and stared at our apartment building, Sarah's apartment building now, and realized I had nowhere to go. I'd burned down my for someone who thought our affair was getting Sarah never answered my calls, never responded to my texts, never gave me the chance to explain or apologize or grovel for forgiveness I didn't deserve. 2 days later, I found out why. She was in the hospital. I found out about Sarah from my coworker Jake, the same guy who'd been encouraging me to experience, instead of settling down. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Dude, isn't Sarah ex-girlfriend?" he said, showing me his phone during our lunch break. "This is crazy." It was a news article from our local paper. The headline read, "Local woman hospitalized after apparent attempt." My hands shook as I read the details. Sarah had been found in her car in the parking garage of our apartment building, engine running, garage door closed. A neighbor had heard the engine and called the police. She'd been unconscious when they found her. The article didn't mention my name, didn't mention our relationship, didn't mention the affair that had driven her to that garage. But I knew that my betrayal had pushed the woman who'd loved me unconditionally to a place where she couldn't see another way out. I ran to the hospital still in my work clothes, my heart hammering against my ribs. The rational part of my brain kept saying this wasn't necessarily about me, that people who attempt usually have multiple factors, that I couldn't know for sure what had driven her to this. But the rest of me knew. I knew because I'd watched the light fade from her eyes over those last few weeks. I'd seen her trying to hold onto us while I actively destroyed everything we'd built. They wouldn't let me see her. I wasn't family, wasn't her emergency contact anymore. Wasn't anyone important in her. I was just the ex-boyfriend who'd broken her heart so thoroughly that she'd tried to stop it from altogether. Her sister Melissa was in the waiting room, along with Sarah's parents and a few close friends. When Melissa saw me, her face twisted with a rage I'd never seen before. "Have some nerve showing here," she said loud enough that everyone in the waiting room turned to stare. "I just wanted to know if she's okay," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Okay," Melissa lied, but there was no humor in it. She tried to herself because cheated on her in a way 5 years like it meant nothing. Because made her feel so that she couldn't see any other way out. The entire waiting room was watching now. Sarah's parents looked at me with disgust I'd never seen on anyone's face before. Her friends looked like they wanted to physically me. "She told me everything," Melissa continued, tears streaming down her face. "About how'd been lying to her for months. About how made her feel crazy for questioning. About how she kept trying to save a relationship already killed." Each word hit me like a physical. I wanted to defend, to explain about my parents and feeling invisible and needing validation. But standing in that hospital waiting room, looking at the devastation I'd caused, all my justifications crumbled to dust. "I'm sorry," I said, and it was the most inadequate thing I'd ever said in my. "Sorry doesn't bring her back from that garage," Melissa said. "Sorry doesn't undo the damage did. Sorry doesn't make her trust anyone ever again." A doctor appeared then, calling for Sarah's family. Melissa and her parents disappeared down the hallway, leaving me standing alone in that waiting room, surrounded by people who knew exactly what kind of person I was. I never found out the details of Sarah's condition that day. I waited for hours, hoping someone would give me an update, but no one did. Eventually, a security guard asked me to leave. Over the next few days I called the hospital obsessively, but they couldn't give me information since I wasn't family. I tried reaching out to mutual friends, but none of them would talk to me. The news had spread through our friend group like wildfire, and I'd become persona non grata overnight. Emma tried calling me a few times but I couldn't bring to answer. What was I supposed to say? That our affair had driven my ex-girlfriend to attempt, that our complicated situation had become a matter of I took a week off work, spent it in a cheap motel room, scrolling through old photos of Sarah and me on my phone. There were hundreds of them. Sarah making pancakes in our kitchen. Sarah laughing at something I'd said. Sarah asleep on my chest during a lazy Sunday morning. Sarah holding her college diploma, beaming with pride while I stood beside her, back when I still deserved to be there. I deleted most of the photos with Emma weeks ago, but I'd kept every single one with Sarah. Even while I was betraying her, some part of me had known she was the real thing. When I finally went back to work, everything had changed. Word had gotten around the office about Sarah's hospitalization, and people looked at me differently. Emma avoided me completely, eating lunch at her desk instead of in the break room, taking different elevators pretending I didn't exist. Jake, who'd spent months telling me I deserved better than monogamy, couldn't meet my eyes when he asked how Sarah was doing. I don't know, I told him. Her family will talk to me. Maybe that's for the best, man. He said uncomfortably. Maybe should just give her space. Like this was a normal breakup instead of a betrayal that had nearly killed someone. 3 weeks after the hospitalization I finally got news. Not from Sarah's family but from our landlord. Sarah was moving out of the apartment. She needed me to come get the rest of my things. I drove to the apartment on a Tuesday afternoon, my hands shaking as I used my old key one last time. Sarah wasn't there, but her sister Melissa was overseeing the packing. She's alive, Melissa said without looking at me. In case we're wondering, I said, and meant it more than I'd ever meant anything. She's in therapy now. Lots of therapy, learning how to trust her own instincts again, since spent months making her think she was crazy for suspecting what we're doing. I watched Melissa pack Sarah's books, her coffee mugs, the little succulent plant she'd kept on every windowsill. All the pieces of the we'd built together, being carefully separated from any trace of me. Where is she gonna live? None of business, Melissa said. She's starting over somewhere, can't find her. Somewhere she can heal without worrying about running into her girlfriend. Emma's not my girlfriend. We're not, it's over. Melissa finally looked at me then, and I saw Sarah's eyes staring back with disappointment so deep it took my breath away. Do you think that matters? Do you think it changes anything that I wait 5 years with my sister for someone don't even care about? She was right. It didn't matter that Emma and I weren't together. It didn't matter that I regretted everything. It didn't matter that I'd realized too late what I'd lost. The damage was done, and no amount of regret could undo it. I gathered my few remaining possessions, some clothes Melissa had packed in boxes, a few books, the coffee maker Sarah had bought me for my birthday 2 years ago. Everything else, the furniture, the decorations, the shared memories made physical, belonged to her. I'd forfeited my claim to our together when I'd started building a secret one with someone else. Can't tell her. I started, then stopped. What could I possibly ask Melissa to tell her? That I was sorry, she already knew that I loved her. I'd proven that wasn't true. That I wished I could take it all back. That was just selfishness masquerading as remorse. Tell her what? Melissa asked. Tell her I hope she finds someone who deserves her. Melissa considered this for a moment. She won't be looking for anyone for a long time. Made sure of that. That was the last time I saw anything connected to Sarah's. I moved into a studio apartment across town, far from all the places we'd made memories together. I deleted social media because seeing mutual friends posting about Sarah's recovery felt like voyeurism. I stopped going to our favorite restaurants, our favorite coffee shop, the bookstore where we'd spent lazy Saturday afternoons. Emma left the company 2 months later. We never spoke after that day in the hospital waiting room. I heard through office gossip that she'd reconciled with her boyfriend. That they were talking about getting married. She'd moved on from our affair like it had been a brief distraction, rather than the thing that had nearly killed someone. My parents called eventually, having heard about Sarah through mutual family friends. They wanted to know if I was okay. If there was anything they could do to help. I'm fine. I lied. Just going through a rough patch. I didn't tell them about the affair, about Sarah's attempt, about how their rejection at graduation had started a chain of self-destructive choices that had culminated in me becoming a person I couldn't stand to be alone with. That would have required explaining how their approval had mattered more to me than Sarah's love, and I wasn't ready to admit that, let alone to them. Months passed. I went to work, came home to my empty apartment, and tried to figure out how to live with what I'd done. I started therapy, not because I wanted to get better, but because I thought it might help me understand how I'd become someone capable of such cruelty. Dr. Martinez was a kind woman in her 50s who listened to my story without judgment. Then spent our sessions helping me see patterns I'd never noticed before. How I'd used other people's attention to validate my worth. How I'd justified betrayal by telling I deserved better. How I'd been so focused on feeling special that I'd forgotten how to appreciate being loved. Do you think I'll ever forgive? She asked during one of our sessions. I don't know if I shall, said. What I did was unforgivable. Forgiveness isn't about what deserve, she said gently. It's about whether can learn from this enough to become someone who would never do it again. I thought about that conversation for weeks. Could I become someone different? Someone who valued love over validation, commitment over excitement, trust over the thrill of secret relationships? I didn't know. What I did know was that I'd lost the only woman who'd ever seen the best in me, and I'd lost her by proving that the worst in me was stronger. A year later, I ran into one of Sarah's friends at a coffee shop downtown. Jennifer had been part of our friend group, had been at our apartment for movie nights and dinner parties back when we were happy. How is she? I asked, and Jennifer looked at me like I'd asked her to betray state secrets. She's doing better, Jennifer said carefully. She moved to Portland, got a new job, new apartment. She's learning how to be happy again. Good, I said and meant it. She deserves to be happy. Jennifer studied my face for a moment. No, she asked me about once. A few months ago. What did she want to know? F seemed sorry. Really sorry, not just sorry got caught. Jennifer paused. I told her I thought that looked different. Smaller, somehow I am smaller, I said. What I did, it changes. It makes realize how little actually are when can someone that badly. Jennifer nodded like she understood. She's not the same person either, no. She's more careful now. More guarded, it's like she learned that people can lie to face for months while plan.